Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Well, people have a few minutes to jump on board. I am glad to let you know that we have interpretation available for today. Just give us a couple of minutes to get ourselves settled. Right, I see people joining the webinar. We have 33 people currently, and we're expecting around 80. So while they join, we are very glad to let you know that we have interpretation. Spanish interpretation for this webinar can be found by clicking on the interpretation button on the Zoom menu and clicking Spanish. Buenas tardes con todos y todas. Estamos muy felices de comunicarles que hoy contaremos con interpretación español. Por favor, seleccione su idioma preferido, Spanish, usando el menú desplegable en la parte inferior de su pantalla. Vamos a comenzar en algunos momentos. All right, we'll begin now. Good afternoon with everyone. My name is Kelly, and I am pleased to be your host today on behalf of the Extreme Heat and Community Resilience Program team. Today, we'll be holding our third out of 4 community input sessions report out to update you on the changes that we made following the 10 community input sessions we held during the summer. Thank you so much for dedicating this 1 hour of your time for us. We are holding Q&As at the end of this session, so we'll be glad to take your questions as well. Before we start, just a couple of items in terms of housekeeping. Please use the Q&A feature, which is right now on your screen. And use the like function to upvote questions that resonate with you so we can focus on those. And third, as you probably notice, we are using a slower pace than normal to speak to ensure that interpretation can reach everyone in the same quality as English. So please bear with us, and thank you so much for your understanding. Today, for the agenda, we have 4 items to cover with you. Just a little bit about the Extreme Heat and Community Resilience Program background, especially for those of you that are new. We'll also cover the updates that have followed the 10 community input sessions. Then we'll tell you a little bit about the feedback that led to those updates. And to finalize, we'll do a brief Q&A. And for that, please don't wait until the end. If you have questions, go ahead and start writing them on the Q&A box. As a reminder, the Extreme Heat and Community Resilience Program sits within the Governor's Office of Land Use and Climate Innovation, and our portfolio can be broadly split into 2, the policy and grant sections of our work. Under the policy section, we are updating the California Extreme Heat Action Plan together with our colleagues at the California Natural Resource Agency. And we're also very proud to be working on the Cal Heat Score, designing it and deploying it this summer together with our colleagues of the Office of Environmental Health and Hazard Assessment, also known as WEHA. And now on the grant side, we just completed round 1, and now we are gearing up to set up round 2. And that's what we are going to focus on today. However, if you're interested in any of the policy bits that I just mentioned, please communicate with our colleague, Catherine Foster. She is our policy lead, and you can contact her via that email that is shown on the screen right now. Now, just as a little bit of background on what we did on round one, we were very pleased to award $32 million across 45 grants in 23 counties. As you can see on the screen, those counties highlighted in orange is where our work is present, and you can read more about them, about each one of these grants on our website, and the link is shown on your screen. Now, for round 2 funding, we are very pleased to have been allocated $22.5 million to continue the extreme heat work in California. And this thanks to our colleagues from the Greenhouse Reduction Fund, also known as GGRF, and Proposition 4, or the bond that you all voted to approve last November. To know more about these programs, please direct yourself to our official websites. I know we have a lot of questions on who else got awarded the climate bonds. Now that I will transition into more of round 2, I just want to start by saying that this funding in this round is allocated to infrastructure, and this is very much what is starting to shape round 2. So now I will go into what is changed since the summer, just pausing momentarily to provide further background, especially for those that are new. What are we funding for round 2? This has changed quite a bit since round 1. For round 2, we have 2 project types that are focused on infrastructure. We have the early transformative infrastructure, and the second one that is the advanced transformative infrastructure. As you can tell by the names and by the funding explanation that I provided before, we have to focus on infrastructure this time around. However, we understand that not everyone is at a point of infrastructure deployment just yet. So our early transformative infrastructure is for those communities, organizations that are still early in their planning. So the planning focus is a big portion of the early transformative infrastructure. However, since this round is about infrastructure, we are requiring that a demonstration project be part of your proposal. Partnerships are required, but tribes are exempt from that requirement. So an example that my colleagues have put here for you is a heat adaptation strategy with a demonstration project as part of that process could be a good fit. It could also be an initiative on turning libraries to provide cooling relief with a planning to expand that service across an entire county. The second side, the other side of the coin of our project types is the advanced transformative infrastructure. As the name suggests, these are 4 proposals that are further along their thinking and are almost ready to deploy their infrastructure project, almost shovel ready. Now, that is not to say that there is no space for planning. That is certainly part of the process. However, we hope that these projects come to us with an advanced idea of what they want to build, and that the planning component focuses more on the actions that project wants to take beyond this project infrastructure alone in order to continue working for extreme heat protection. Again, partnerships will be required for this project type as well. And again, tribes will be exempt from that. And I will speak a little bit about partnerships requirement in a minute. My colleague has also provided a couple of examples here from other states The Tucson Storm to Shape program creates a cooler city, and it could also be paired with gray infrastructure. In the picture depicted here, we have cooling concrete that is also being part of the story of our round one grantees. Now, we have updated the award amounts that were proposed during our summer sessions. We heard you loud and clear. We'll have $22.5 million for 30-month projects. For our early infrastructure, we have increased the ranges on our offerings. So now those will be ranging from $600,000 to $1 million. For the infrastructure component of that, we are asking that at least 25% of the amount that you request within that range be allocated to the infrastructure or to the demonstration projects. And at least 20% of that be allocated to your partners and or belonging activities to ensure that users of the infrastructure feel welcome. And I will speak a little bit about what belonging means in a little bit, since that is new from our community input sessions. Now, on the other side of the coin, we have our advanced transformative infrastructure. We have also increased our ranges here. So now they are going from $2.5 million to $4 million. Because this budget is destined to infrastructure, we're asking to allocate 70 to 85% of that to the infrastructure itself, and a minimum of 15% to be allocated to your partnership and belonging work. Now, eligible applicants, you are already familiar with this. CBOs, community-based organizations, local and regional public entities, public higher academic institutions, and California Native American tribes are all eligible to apply as either leads or co-applicants or as part of their partnership. In terms of program values, we have remained with the same values that were shared with you during the summer. We are staying with harm reduction, collaborative partnership, and transformation. Harm reduction because that's at the core of our program and what we are called to do, to find solutions that reduce heat-related illness and death. And in so doing, we are asking that these solutions put vulnerable people at the front of those solutions and combine them with the strength of partnerships to ensure that the solutions are lasting. And for our transformation value, we understand that our round two calls for infrastructure, but we also understand from our conversations with community, our own experiences in round one, that the social infrastructure plays a big role in making solutions transformative and lasting. So we're also asking for these projects to keep both the physical and social infrastructure in mind to make sure that our responses to extreme heat in California are lasting and meaningful. And now I'm moving on to partnership requirements. Community-based organizations can partner with local or regional public entities or vice versa. If you are a higher academic institution, you need to partner with a CBO and local or regional public entity. And this is just so we make sure that these proposals have the buy-in, the participation of communities, but also the authority that is needed from local or regional public entities to build infrastructure in the area of extreme heat. And just to remind everyone, California Native American tribes are exempt for these partnership requirements to, one, reduce the barriers of participation and access to the funding, but also because the way in which their governments work allow for the other concerns that we have and that have the other part and the absence of the other partnerships. So with this, I will pass on to my colleague Braden to continue with the presentation.
Thank you, Kelly, and good to see everyone here. I see some Familiar names, not just from this summer, but from the last several years of running the Extreme Heat and Community Resilience Grant Program. Next slide. So one of the elements that we didn't go as into as much detail this summer, but we really felt the need to make sure we were explaining is the belonging element. So you saw Kelly talk about how a certain percentage of the grant budget will need to be spent on partnerships and belonging. So for the early state transformative infrastructure projects, that will be 15% of your budget spent on CBO partnerships, um, if you're a local government, and 5% spent on the belonging element. Um, for the advanced infrastructure projects, it's 10% on community-based partnerships, and then 5% along the belonging element. So the idea here with the belonging work is, and this is coming from uh, listening sessions that we've done over the last several years, observations we've had from round one, that there's really, and the literature around climate infrastructure, is that it's really important to make sure that resilience infrastructure belongs to a community and is owned by the community and is for all of the community. And so the idea here is to create a process as a part of your proposal that includes being inclusive, being accessible, and approaching things creatively, thinking about the creative element or creative process of your work. And so inclusion involves ensuring a broad coalition of community support, which enables a sense of place, safety, and builds trust, both between community members and potentially between different organizations that are working on the project. Accessibility is really about community-centered design, making sure that all community members have a voice, especially the access and functional need communities. So there's the whole idea around curb cuts. It's a very good example. It was originally designed for people in wheelchairs, but it actually helps all sorts of people that may have issues with walking, use other wheeled transportation. And so it was designed to meet the needs of one, but actually makes a sidewalk a much more inclusive piece of infrastructure overall. And whether you're building bus stops or commute cooling centers or any other community forests, parks retrofits, any of the things you might be developing in this project, there's an opportunity to be create accessible infrastructure to involve access and functional need communities into this work. And then on the creative side, there's an opportunity to engage with creators, community engaged artists, culture bearers, people that really understand the place where your infrastructure is going and are able to embed that infrastructure into the community through storytelling, cultural practices, different creative approaches. And so we're not we're asking to make sure that you're doing at least one of these things well, and you're bringing someone in to help your infrastructure be inclusive, to help it be accessible, to help it be creative. If you're able to involve all of these elements, that's great, but we're looking for at least some major element of our understanding of belonging to be embedded into the work. Next slide, Kelly. So, a little bit about what that can look like. You can embed belonging both into the process of building your infrastructure and into the resulting infrastructure. So, there's practices and experts that can be brought in on trauma-informed design and community-based design, bringing in social workers to make sure that you're understanding the various traumas that people have been through in your community, whether that's racial trauma, whether that's trauma from an extreme heat death or other climate catastrophe, that there's ways of making sure that you're approaching your community with an understanding of the harm that has already existed in your community and that ecosystem with which in this infrastructure is now being placed. And then you heard me a little bit talk about the values of community-based design that could also be infused into the process. Then when it comes to belonging and how it could result in your physical project, that could be through murals and sculptures, music, writing, dance, other creative expressions. There was a great NPR story this summer about culture bearers who around jazz who were using jazz to help communicate about extreme heat by actually using music to display to talk about how it's getting hotter in New Orleans. So the music would speed up to talk about how it's getting hotter and hotter over time. So that is was an amazing way of talking about how culture bearers can help a community understand heat in their own cultural practices, in their own music or dance or other community expressions. Um, Community meals and events, different references in the infrastructure to local people, places, and things. So references to food or local flora and fauna, or different types of approaches that bring in community, like community gardens or like public art that brings people into a space. They're all different ways to foster belonging in your project. And so we want you to be thinking about both belonging as something that could happen in the process of building, designing and building your infrastructure, as well as in the resulting piece of infrastructure. Next slide. So a few updates. We did do several explicit community input sessions with tribes, and we got a lot of great questions and input through that. And so we're still waiting on legal review, but we have received interest in making sure that the tribal definition that's in our grant guidelines follows the Native American Heritage Commission, and that we have specific guidelines around tribally led nonprofits that can apply for those tribes that aren't on the Native American Heritage Commission list. And this is something that we're working on in concert with the Strategic Growth Council, who is also going to be granting Prop $4 with the Transformative Climate Communities Program and with the Community Resilience Center program. So we are going to be working with our SGC colleagues to make sure that our tribal definition, as well as our definition of around tribal nonprofits, is as inclusive as we can be. We also are able to only for tribes allow for indirect cost rates to align with federally negotiated rates. Um, so that is something that we did not clearly state in our first round and are going to make sure we have clearer language if possible around indirect rates. As you've heard us mention before, we don't have partnership requirements. That comes out of deep listening and communications and dialogue that we did during the course of our first round, where we decided not to have partnership requirements for tribes. And then in our first round, and again in this round, we will not have a waiver of sovereign immunity. That will not be required. So, and that's been something that many tribes have been very clear on making sure are not included in grant programs like ourselves. Next slide. So, in terms of the round two timeline, uh, community input sessions happen this summer. You're hearing a report back from us to give you an update. The application period is likely actually going to open sometime this spring, with the hope of awards being announced by the end of the 2026 calendar year. It's going to be a sprint for all of us involved, but we've had to push back our NOFA release date to in order to comply with Prop 4 guidance and regulations, and so we are moving as fast as we can so that we can still award by the end of 2026. So hopefully late fall of 2026. Next slide. So we're very excited to be able to announce these Find Your Project Partner events. So one of the things that we heard loud and clear this summer uh, was I'm a local government. I want to know the CBOs that are working on extreme heat or interested in extreme heat so I can consider them being part of my project. We also heard from CBOs that wanted to have contacts in with local governments that were interested in doing work in their area. So we have the opportunity to have our third party technical assistance provider, Civics, host Find Your Project Partner events. And so they're hosting a statewide event on Thursday, and then they'll host one event for every fifth assessment climate region, all nine of them over the course of the coming weeks in this month of November. So we will have a link at the end of this session today to make sure that you're able to go, and we would love for you to share this with any CBOs or local governments that you think might be interested in attending and meeting other partners. There's also going to be a tool where you can sign up, basically take a survey that allows us to have your information and post it on our website so that as people are trying to find their partners for this grant program, that those of you that want to be a part of a public list to be contacted can do that. So really are excited. We weren't able to have this offering in round one. We heard from a lot of potential applicants that were really interested in this type of partner finding process, and so we're really proud to be able to offer it this time. Next slide. So we want to go into a little bit more depth around what we heard this summer and how what we heard this summer has influenced where we're headed with the decisions that we've made. Since I got to LCI 2.5 years ago, and since the ICARP grant programs basically kicked off about 3.5 years ago, we've just been incredibly committed to being in dialogue with tribes and community-based organizations and local governments and individuals about how to shape our grant programs. And the Extreme Heat and Community Grant Resilience Grant Program has absolutely taken that very seriously throughout the entire creation process of round one, and then now in the creation of round two. Next slide. So this summer, we hosted three statewide sessions. We hosted five regional sessions, so we combined regions, and then two tribal community sessions. 500 people attended those sessions. 335 people responded to our polls and surveys during and after those meetings. So we were able to have quite a bit of dialogue with folks about what they were interested in, their reactions to where our original proposal for round two. Major themes was there was a real interest in program values. There was interest in really giving us feedback on their funding preferences, including award amounts and ranges. And then there were a lot of questions around partnerships. Next slide. Thanks, Kelly. So, a few positives, things that people were excited about. People seemed to be very excited about the program values. We heard good feedback that people liked that we went from 10 program values just to 3 program values. People were supportive of us having heavy scoring for the narrative section, and the narrative section is going to be where we ask you about how are you doing harm reduction? How are you doing effective partnerships? How is your project considering transformation? And so we definitely will have, be valuing the narrative section strongly in this still. We are going to be valuing the budget and work plan more than we did in previous rounds, or in our previous round, but still with a heavy emphasis on the narrative section. And then we definitely heard that folks were interested in funding ranges, and you heard from Kelly that we do have funding ranges for both grant types over just a fixed amount. So we were happy to continue to offer those funding ranges. We did ask, so there were some areas of improvement that folks asked for. So there was interest in more clarity around the transformation value. The transformation value is new to this round, and so it isn't something that we talked about in very clear terms in round one. And so it's something we just introduced this summer. So further clarity and more technical assistance around transformation was really interested. Folks were interested in potentially larger award amounts. And so that's why you saw us get to these larger amounts in the proposal that we just gave. And there was also an interest in larger ranges. So that's why we also looked at the ranges of the grant program in terms of amounts. Next slide. So a little reminder of just to refresh our memory. As I mentioned, we would go into more depth on transformation as a value. We reframed transformational projects to transformation. This slight reframe is intended to simplify how people are thinking about their projects and making sure we have clear definitions to transformation. Next slide. So, project participants were asked if the three proposed values were aligned to their projects. As you can see, the feedback we received about the program was overwhelming. This made us feel confident in our direction with these values. In our open-ended responses and technical assistance questions, we heard people ask for more clarity around transportation. Or, I mean, transformation. Next slide. So, when we talk about transformation, I want to take the opportunity to go in a little bit more detail than we did this summer. We're talking about a project that has a vision that leads to lasting policy change. So let's say, you have an urban forest project that creates a series of microforests in your community. The idea is, okay, we fund you to create the microforest, but then you could have a policy that then says this is how we're going to maintain these in the future, or this is how these are the standards we have for when people put in microforests, what they look like. That's a lasting policy that's on the books of your city or your county or your jurisdiction, your tribe, that then guides urban cooling work for whatever you're working on for decades to come. That's one way of making your microforest investment in this example not only just be that single investment, but grow because of the way that you're guiding future investments. There's also a way to make sure that you're doing that microforest and then you do additional long-term planning to figure out how you expand microforests in your community, for years to come. Then there's this idea that you put in the microforest and then you create a microforest program to help make sure that the community can maintain that microforest for years to come. So that's a programmatic expansion that allows for that ongoing transformation. Or we can fund a microforest and then you can come up with a plan for how your capital improvement program funds five more microforests into the future. So whether it's through policy change, planning, programs, or new infrastructure investment beyond the one we're making, those are all ways of showing how this investment is actually leading to broader, longer scale change in your community. What we know is that we have a very small grant program. It's a $22 million and a $500,000 investment, and we're hoping that the investments we make actually spark much larger, broader transformation in your communities. If we're really going to save lives in California, we have to go beyond the impact of what a single investment can make, and that's why this transformation value is really, I believe, important because it will lead to lasting change and hopefully to further protection of Californians from extreme heat. So we give two examples. One example is from an early infrastructure, transformative infrastructure kind of idea. The idea here is a community builds an urban forestry master plan. It includes a native seed bank and nursery to support future plantings. The long-term vision includes boasting local native plant supply. There's a target goal for the percentage of native plants planted in the region. And then the program develops capacity that supports others to take on similar work. So it's finding a way to build between the vision, between a policy that has a targeted goal, between thinking about long-term supply of plants so that you can continue to do this for years to come by developing capacity so more people know how to do the work. It's beyond just creating an urban forestry master plan and knowing, oh, this is what we're going to do in the next 5 years, but it's making sure there's other elements that you're bringing to the table to make sure that that change actually lasts in your community. Our advanced example is around this is actually one of our this is based on one of our large infrastructure projects from round one. This example is a multi-stakeholder partnership installs 40 cool home retrofits with solar AC units that's paired with workforce development. And some of the transformational elements could include catalyzing broader local investment in climate resilience infrastructure, meaning building more of these units in the county. New generation of HVAC installers, so doing more workforce development to make sure a whole new generation of installers is able to install more than just those 40 units, and then establishing long-term partnerships between tribes and CBOs and local governments. Long-term partnerships like that then have MOUs saying, hey, we're going to work together for the next 10 years. That's a transformational component because it's saying, hey, yes, we're doing these 40 home retrofits, but we're actually going to fund and continue this partnership to continue to this work for longer periods of time. So there's a lot of different ways that your community can consider how to do partnership and or transformation and how you can embed transformation into your work. We're not asking you to necessarily have a perfect plan for policy planning programs and infrastructure, but we're looking for an investment in at least one of these things to show that you're committed to really fostering transformation beyond a single investment. I'm going to slow down so interpreters can catch up. And we can go to the next slide. So the application scoring remains unchanged. At this point, right now, we're looking at a narrative section that has 15 points each uh, for each of the three values, as well as for the project vision and description. And then currently we have 40% for the work plan and budget. This still may change in the final guidelines, but at this point we haven't made any changes yet. And if we do, we would definitely let folks know as part of the grant guideline updates and the notice of funding announcement. Next slide. So this section was um, interesting in terms of getting a lot of community input. So the majority of respondents said that the narrative section should be given greater weight in the workbook. And so that's why we're maintaining the balance that I just showed you of 60 for narrative and 40 for budget and work plan. Next slide. So just to remind you about where we've gone from the original amount to the updated project amounts. So the original project amounts for early transformation was $500,000 to $600,000. And now we've expanded that to from $600,000 to $1 million. So the range is wider and the range is higher. And then we've done the same for advanced transformative infrastructure. We originally were at $1.8 million to $2.2 million. And now we've moved it for the bottom range to be $2.2 million up to $4 million. So that's another example. We heard people liked broader ranges. We've heard people thought that there should be more money, and we made both of those changes. Next slide. And then, we highlighted the updated ranges. Um, And then just want to make sure that folks are aware, as we said before, 25% of the project of the early transformative infrastructure project needs to be 25% needs to be for your demonstration project. So it has to be physical infrastructure. That can be a nature-based solutions-based type of infrastructure like green stormwater infrastructure or urban forestry, or it can be built environment infrastructure like bus shelters, cooling centers, cool pavements and surfaces. And then 20% of the early transformative infrastructure needs to be go towards partnerships and belonging, as you heard me talk about earlier. And then with the advanced transformative infrastructure, uh, we are not exactly sure exactly what the total infrastructure percentage is going to be yet. It's going to be hopefully somewhere between 70 and 85%. It's still subject to review and to making sure that we're in alignment with Prop 4 and GGRF guidelines. So we're hoping it's between 70 and 80% infrastructure for those advanced grants, but we're not sure if that'll have to change. And then we're hoping for 15% of the budget to be spent on partnerships and belonging. We are looking at all projects for round two having a 30-month timeline. Next slide. So to remind you, you heard about our timeline. It'll be application period next spring into the summer. Still aiming to have awards out by the end of 2026, if we possibly can. Next slide. So as you heard me talk about before, so excited about these Finder project partner events. First one starts on Thursday with the statewide event. Have a lot of folks coming to that. Feel free to use the QR code for the event registration. And then you also heard me talk about the partnership hosting tool. So you can use this QR code for the partnership tool. So we're going to move over. We're going to leave this up for just a minute, if that's okay, Kelly, just in case people need to grab this.
Yes, that's correct.
Great. Um, and then I can start just informally working through some of the questions in Q&A, and then we'll move to the official Q&A slide in a second. So we have an anonymous um, attendee that says confirming that infrastructure includes natural systems such as trees. I did just say that, so I did clarify that. So infrastructure will have a clear definition of both being a built environment solutions as well as nature-based solutions. Next one from a non-attendee. Are schools eligible to apply? So schools are school districts and schools are considered local entities in our local entity definition, so they are able to apply. Um, and now I think we're good on, we can move to the Q&A slide. This is thank you for hosting this session. Will there be opportunities for educational initiatives as a component of these projects? So, in terms of of exactly what you mean by educational initiatives, the community partnerships component of the grants could be spent having CBOs doing educational initiatives and outreach initiatives. So that is one way. And then we are looking, especially for the early transformation grants, there's definitely an opportunity to figure out you only have to have a 25% demonstration project, and the other side can be education, awareness, planning, all sorts of components like that. So, um, this is not as open as we were in the first round because our sources of funding, we have to have infrastructure components, and we have less flexibility than we did last time. But certainly, so this is you can't have a standalone educational uh, project because that wouldn't include infrastructure. But you could have an educational component, and there's a few ways you could weave education into your grants. Next question. Do you plan to meet or have met with government agencies responsible for implementing capital projects and what they need? Yeah, so we've been on ongoing conversations since the beginning. Since I come from local government, I was in local government in one city for 7 years and another city for years. So I come with a lot of experience in local government and have been in conversations with local governments, with Parks and Recs departments, Public Works departments, climate offices across the state, both at the city and county level, talking to them about how to potentially use this grant program for their capital projects, and talking to them about what makes the most sense in terms of how our grant dollars can be used for their capital projects. So it's absolutely been a major component of what we've been trying to do.
Great.
Um,
And just a quick note to slow down a little bit for interpretation, please, and maybe I'll read the questions and then I'll allow you the microphone to answer.
so
We have a question from Kirsten. Is it possible to change the Central Coast date? November 6th is a county convening of Climate and Climate Justice Network in San Luis Obispo. I did not see the LCI on the agenda for that. Happy to share more information.
yeah, that's we're sorry that there's a conflict there. We're gonna have to talk to our staff. There's the potential where we could add a second Central Coast date, maybe. I have a hard time imagining moving the one that we have just because we've been communicating about it and it would be difficult to move. But we're happy to follow up with you and see if there's any ways that we can make sure that we're communicating with the folks that are in attendance for that event.
And perhaps what I will emphasize here is to use our partnership tool to submit your information, because that is what's going to stay with us and what people are going to be able to use to contact each other. As a state agency, we can't facilitate partnerships directly, so this is why we have a consulting group organize these sessions on our behalf. I will encourage everyone to use the tool. If you already have a project in mind, or would like to be contacted in terms of partnership, please use that tool in order to find each other. I have another question here. How is the 15% scoring for collaborative partnership redistributed for tribal applicants?
That's a great question. We're in the middle of drafting the um the guidelines now, and that is a question that we're gonna have to answer, but we have not answered it yet.
Next question. With the increase per project amounts and the reduced total combined with the goal of awarding projects with geographic distribution in mind, among the 6 companies which did not receive awards in round 1, how is your team considering balancing awards between these tensions?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. Um, the biggest challenge is we in our first round we awarded 45 grants, and we have a very small staff running our grant program. So you're looking at them. There's there are 3 people that every minute of their day is spent on the grant program, and then I help as much as I can, but I also have the policy program to work with as well. And so it's a very small group of people, and we made sure in round 1 that we got to as many places as we can. We had 49 awards and 45 grantees, and we are not able to manage with 3 or 4 people 80 grantees. So this round cannot have the same amount of grantees that the previous round has. We don't have the ability to manage that amount of grants and manage that amount of invoices. It's just not possible. So part of the reason that we're funding less projects at a higher amount has to do just with the capacity of what we can handle. I was very ambitious because we heard that people wanted smaller grants and wanted grants, you know, that worked for their communities. We did 31 small, was it 31? At least, yeah, 31 small grants as part of our first round. And we have sort of tapped our capacity to do more of those small grants. So we are committed. There will be a third round of funding. We're committed to trying to make sure that more places in California have access to our funds. We are not able to have any kind of regional weight in our scoring. So we don't have an ability to choose that money goes to regions or not goes to regions. It's just based on the interagency review process that does the scoring of the grants. But we certainly have been trying to get the word out across all 9 climate regions of the state to make sure that folks know about our grant and are coming up with project proposals. But yeah, I would love to be able to do small grants again. We may be able to do small grants again, smaller grants that allow for smaller grants in more places for round 3. But due to our current capacity constraints, we were put in a position where we have to do larger grants in the second round.
Thank you for that, Raven. That's a very candid answer. It's certainly tough conversations that we have to have internally. I'm gonna move to the next question. Do share structures qualify?
You can answer that one, Kelly.
Yes, shade structure qualified as certainly a possibility. Would you consider physical infrastructure like solar, battery backup to support critical facilities that help the community respond to extreme heat events appropriate to meet infrastructure requirements?
Yes, the answer is yeah. Yeah, the solar and battery backup to support critical facilities was eligible in the first round, and it'll be eligible, likely will be eligible in this second round.
Next question, what documentation is required for proof of partnerships? Will this be an MOU, memo of understanding? Could partnerships change after being confirmed as a recipient? Thanks so much for the informative session. Thanks, Dougie.
So the main partnership we're talking about is that if you're a lead applicant, you have to have a qualifying co-applicant. And so if I'm a local government, I have to have a community-based organization or local community 501(c)(3) that qualifies me for the program. Um, we do not require that you have to have a partnership requirement, a partnership agreement, but you have to have it by the time of your first invoice. You don't have to have it by the time of application. So we will require a proof of partnership. Um, oh, I didn't want that question to go away because I still have to really think about answering it. Um, Here I can go back to answered questions so I can get back to it. So, oh, is it not there anymore? We do require that you have a letter of support from your co-applicant. So you do have to prove that the applicant exists and wants to be a part of the project. Um, you have the opportunity, you do not have the opportunity to change your partner because your partner is what is getting scored. And so if you go in as a local government and you apply with a CBO co-applicant, and then that CBO co-applicant can't do the work, and you can't choose another co-applicant because you won the award with the awardees understanding that co-applicant and what that co-applicant said they were going to do. So you would have to, if you were not able, uh, so for other contributors, if you have like, we have contributors that aren't co-applicants that are CBOs that are gonna, or other organizations that are gonna be a part of the project and paid members of the project, but they're not co-applicants. You could change a contributor once you're awarded if it was appropriate, but if you had to change a co-applicant, you would no longer have the same team that was scored with the score you got, and you would no longer be able to go to contract and be funded.
Thanks, Braden. For the next question, this is about reimbursement and what we mean by advanced transformative projects. 30-month timeline from award announcement. How are the funds disbursed? Are these in 2 installments? So let's go and answer that question first. I can take it and that's fine. So our program is reimbursement based, and you can request a reimbursement either monthly or up every 3 months or quarterly. So yes, to answer that question, it's not 2 installments, it's either monthly or quarterly, depending on the capacity of the awardee to submit reimbursement requests. Now, Brendan, I will ask you this question. What do we mean by shovel ready, by the advanced transformative infrastructure? What kind of projects are we considering there?
So the idea, the shovel ready can mean a lot of things. In our first round, we were really looking for projects that were already in design and that we could fill in. This kind of goes back to, have you been talking to governments about, capital projects? And so one of the things we heard is, hey, if we're at 0 or 30% on a project, could we apply for funding? And the answer is yes. So at the end of the day, 30-month project. if it's the type of project where you can go from community engagement, design, implementation, celebration, be done with that piece of infrastructure, you can start from scratch. But ideally, given that it's 30 months and there isn't a lot of time, your community has already been working on an infrastructure solution that then this project feeds well into, especially for the advanced transformative infrastructure projects. The reason we have the early transformative infrastructure projects are for communities that aren't ready for a big shovel-ready project and need more planning done and are only ready to do smaller demonstration type of projects.
Thank you, Braden. For the next question, I'm not entirely sure if I understand it, so I'm going to ask your support, Braden, for this one. Your partnership slide showed CBOs partnering with a public entity. Is the requirement for the CBOs to be prime?
So the partnership slide, we're trying to show both. If you're a public entity, you have to have a CBO. If you're a CBO, you have to have a public entity. So if a CBO is the lead applicant, it does have to have a local government as a co-applicant.
Perfect. And I think that's the same question that Rebecca Brams submitted for 501c3's lead applicants. What type of co-applicant do you have to have? That would be a local or a regional, a public government entity.
In our first round, we did allow for an exemption that allowed 501c3s not to have local government entities. And what we've now found is when you're trying to build infrastructure, it is very difficult to build large scale infrastructure without the support of a local public entity. And so given that we are building infrastructure this time around, we're not going to have the same ability to opt out of partnership like we did in round one.
Thank you, Braden. We are 2 minutes away from closing, and I just want to take an opportunity to share a couple of other grant opportunities that might be useful for attendees. We have two sibling programs that have also received bond money. These are the Transformative Climate Communities, TCC, and also the Community Resilience Centers, which could also be a good option to explore. They are currently, their guidelines are open for public comment. So if you want more information, please Google these two opportunities as well in case that is a better fit. But certainly we will continue sharing all of our updates for this program through our newsletter listserv. So please take your phone out. It takes 1 minute to sign up. We also try our best to disseminate our updates via our social media, which you can see listed right now on screen. But it's certainly our newsletter, our first go-to whenever we have updates. And with that, I just want to take 1 minute to thank very deeply to our two interpreters. Our grant is difficult to communicate. There is a lot of technical language. And as you can see, we're trying our hardest to pace ourselves. And so this is certainly a big job for them. So thank you so much to our two interpreters. And I also want to thank the rest of our team, Colin, Riley, Catherine, and Angelo, who have been working behind the scenes to bring this presentation to you. I hope we made it justice, and we really hope to see you during our application process. Thank you so much.
Kelly, can we let people know we'll send an email wrap up that it will include the link to the newsletter?
Yes, sounds good. All attendees and everyone that signed up to attend this session will receive a summary of our community input sessions that were held during the summer, as well as a copy of the presentation today and a link to sign up for the newsletter. So you have all the information. All right. With that, I'm going to go ahead and close. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.